What's happening, everybody? My name is Drew Bishop, and if you're new to my channel, I'm a trader, an investor, and an entrepreneur, and I try to put out 1 to 2 videos a week with something you can practically apply to your trading today. So in today's video, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over some trend trading secrets. And what I mean by that is I'm basically going to go through how to identify a trend using extensions and pullbacks, and then kind of use some tips to figure out if the trend is either gaining some steam, potentially losing some steam, and I think it's got some good stuff you can practically apply to your trading today to make you a better trader. So I hope you enjoy the video. If you do, please feel free to subscribe to the channel, leave a comment, or shoot me the like button, whatever it may be. And with that being said, I'll see you in the video.
Just said in the intro, what I want to go over today is the basics of how to read a trend, some trend terminology, and then some stuff you can use to kind of figure out if the trend is gaining some steam or potentially running out of some steam. So the first thing we need to talk about before we can discuss a trend is understanding the terminology. So in a trend, there's two things. There's something called an extension and a pullback. There's an extension and a pullback. So the extension is just the trending move up, right? The pullback is a move in the opposite direction, which we consider like exhaustion, right? Exhaustion of the overall trend before following through back to the upside in the same direction as the trend. So once again, in a trend, there's two things. There's extensions and there's pullbacks. There's extensions and there's pullbacks. So now let's look at a bearish trend. So here is my what? This would be my extension. This would be my pullback. This would be another extension. This would be a pullback. See what I'm saying? So we've got extensions, extensions, pullbacks, pullbacks, pullbacks. So here's the brief terminology of what a trend is, understanding the words that go into a trend. So now that you know those brief concepts, let's go over some stuff on the price chart, how to identify the trend, and then basically how to see if it's running out of steam and kind of what's going on from there. So here's a small bullish trend on the price chart. And first thing we want to do is let's mark off our extensions and our pullbacks. So first thing, what is this? This right here. This is called an extension, which would make this the pullback, right? I'm imagining you guys are saying it with me. So here would be the next what? The next extension, right? And then here would be a pullback. So now let's talk about a couple things. So one way to tell if the trend is gaining some steam is by taking the length of the extensions, right? So this move right here. So let's take the length of it. So let's go from point A, click from the low, click from to the high, right? We're measuring how big of a move we had. Now let's drag it over. Next, let's do the same thing for this next extension. We'll take from our low and go up to the high. Now let's compare the two and see if there's any difference. So actually, let me see if I can line these up. Just perfect. So I'm lining them up at the bottom here, and look what happens. A little bit of a gap here. So what that tells us is that this second extension was longer than the first. So just from a common sense standpoint now, let's think about it. Do you guys think that the steam or the momentum has gotten stronger or has gotten weaker? Well, the easy concept would just be to think about it in the fact that we made a bigger move, right? We made a longer move on our next extension compared to the first. So what that tells me, at least, is that we've gained some momentum. The bullish trend has gotten stronger, right? Because once again, we have gained momentum just by the size of these two extensions. So that's one quick way to determine. Now, let's go on to talk about the pullbacks. So once again, these are the pullbacks, right? It's a pullback in the opposite direction of the extension. So we can do the same thing. Let's measure how deep of a pullback we had. So let's go from our high to our low. Now let's take it over here and drag it. Let's go from our high to our low. Let's take it over here and drag it. Now let's compare the two. So I'm matching up the highs. Now look at the difference, right? The difference is this little gap right here. So now what does this tell you? Let's think about it. So here's our extension. Here's our pullback. Here was our extension. Here was our pullback. So here's my first pullback, right? It's a deeper pullback than this one. So if you think about it, what that tells us is that this extension up and this pullback was shallower than this one. Or there was less bearish pressure that came in the market or selling pressure before the bullish trend then continued, right? So this is a great clue that we have a strong bullish trend forming because the extensions are getting bigger and the pullbacks or the exhaustion of the overall trend, right, the opposite moves is getting smaller. So if this move would have done this, let's say this pullback here pulled all the way down into here, okay? Now let's compare our two pullbacks. We'll take this one and take this one, right? Much deeper. So that signals much more exhaustion in the opposite direction. So what that would tell me is that the trend is running out of some steam compared to this one. And then what we had happen is a lot smaller, right? So that tells me that we're gaining some steam because we did not need as much exhaustion, right? We did not need as much exhaustion or as big of a pullback before the trend continued to the upside. So this is a very brief explanation about how to read a trend, how to distinguish between extensions and pullbacks, and then how to tell if we're gaining some steam or if we're losing some steam. So once again, just a quick reminder, mark off your extensions and then compare the previous two, right? If the most recent one was bigger than the previous one, you know that you gained some steam just because we made a longer move. Now when it comes to your pullbacks, if your most recent pullback, this one, is smaller than your second one, the one previous to it, you know that you still gained some steam, right? Because it didn't take as much exhaustion or as big of a pullback in the opposite direction before continuing back up in a trending move. So hope this makes sense. I hope I wasn't talking too fast. If you guys got any questions, feel free to reach out. If you like this video, please feel free to comment, give me a thumbs up, or subscribe to the channel. But I wanted to just give the brief explanation in the basics of how to read a trend, how to tell, if the trend is running out of some steam. And actually, before I go, now that's on my mind. So how can you practically apply this now to your trading? Well, let's say you're a trend trader and you say, here's my extension, here's my pullback, here's my next extension. Well, one thing you might want to do is just take this move here, drag it to here, and tell yourself, if we ever cross below this line, right, on our pullback, maybe you don't want to take a pullback entry because now it tells you that we're losing some steam. We are not as strong, right? Because if we were as strong, we would not have to pass below this level before pushing up to the upside. So that's just one extra way you could potentially use this into your trading to make you a better trend trader. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Talk to you guys later in the week.